Excel exams are often one of the last steps of the commercial real estate interview process before you receive an offer, since most firms will actually want to see the technical skills that you said you had throughout the interview process. And coming in prepared for an exam is a huge part of ultimately landing an offer, and while these do vary a lot between companies, there are a few things I recommend in virtually all cases to get ready for a test that you might have coming up. So whether you already have an exam scheduled in the next few weeks, or you just want to make sure you'll be ready for an exam that might be given to you at some point in the future, in this video we'll cover my top 3 recommendations to prepare for an Excel modeling test during the interview process, and the things that are actually worth focusing on to get the most out of your prep. So the first thing to focus on when preparing for an Excel modeling exam over everything else is practicing building out models from scratch using a given predetermined set of assumptions. In the vast majority of cases, these tests are going to be structured in a case study format, meaning that you'll be given a set of assumptions around things like the property's purchase price, closing costs, operating revenue, operating expenses, assumed revenue and expense growth rates, vacancy rates, and even sale assumptions on the deal, and you'll also often be given details on assumed debt terms, including a loan-to-value ratio, an interest rate, and an amortization period to calculate monthly payments. And from there, using this information, you'll then be asked to create cash flow projections that are going to be used to answer questions about the performance of the investment, including equity return metrics like the IRR, equity multiple, and cash-on-cash return, and debt metrics like the loan constant, DSCR, and debt yield. And you may also need to use these cash flows to run additional calculations to solve for things like a maximum offer price given a target IRR, or to run a sensitivity analysis to view the impacts of different market conditions on the key return metrics measured on the deal. Now, the exact details of the assumptions and the questions on each exam will obviously differ from company to company, but the core of almost every modeling test is going to come down to taking deal assumptions that fall into one of these categories, building out a dynamic cash flow model that incorporates these assumptions, and then using what you've built to actually analyze a deal, often in a variety of different investment scenarios. Now, the second thing I'd recommend to prepare for an Excel modeling test is to use the length of the exam and the activities of the company that you're interviewing with to help guide your exam prep. From a timing perspective, most in-office Excel modeling exams are going to be somewhere between about 1 and 4 hours in length, with most companies telling you beforehand how long you'll have to complete the test, which can give you a lot of insight up front into what's likely to be expected of you when you come in to take the test. The expectations in a 1-hour exam are going to be significantly different than the expectations in a 4-hour exam, and in general, the shorter your test is scheduled to be, the simpler the prompt is also going to be, and the longer you'll have to complete an exam, the more complex of an assignment you're likely to come across. This is a really good way to get a sense for what specifically you should be preparing for, since a 60-minute exam usually isn't going to include things like complex waterfall modeling or intricate commercial lease modeling, but if you have 3 or 4 hours to finish up a test, these things are much more likely to show up on the exam. Now, in many cases, companies will intentionally make an exam take longer than the time they provide just to see how candidates perform under pressure, but a good general rule of thumb is that the shorter a test is expected to be, the more you'll want to double down on the basics, and the longer a test is expected to be, the more you'll need to take some extra time up front to make sure you feel comfortable with some more advanced modeling concepts. Now, once you factored in the timing of the exam, you'll also want to think about who you're interviewing with and the types of projects that you'd be working on if you were to land the job. For example, if you're interviewing for an acquisitions analyst role at a company focused specifically on the industrial sector, it's pretty likely that your modeling exam is going to involve the analysis of a potential industrial property acquisition, and you want to focus your prep with this in mind. Most exams won't require you to know much or anything about the differences in operations between different product types, but residential deals do tend to be modeled slightly differently than commercial deals when it comes to referencing a number of units versus a property's square footage, and ground-up development models can look very different from models that analyze the acquisition of an existing commercial property. So if at all possible, try to keep your prep as focused as you can on the general part of the industry that you'll be working in. While some companies will throw topics out of left field, most employers are primarily using these tests to see how well you're going to be able to do the things that will be required of you on the job. And if you look at modeling exam prep with this in mind, a lot of what you'll need to prepare for will very likely come directly from the responsibilities that are listed in the job description. Now, finally, the last recommendation I want to make here is related to something I mentioned in the last point we just talked about, and this is to make sure you've mastered the fundamentals before diving in to more advanced modeling topics. If you're still not clear on how to model monthly debt service payments or how to calculate a property's projected sale value using an exit cap rate assumption, you should not be jumping into modeling things like interest-only periods on loans or complex equity waterfall calculations. And while many companies will include some advanced modeling components on an exam, what employers are really looking for in candidates, especially at the analyst level, is that they clearly understand the fundamentals of real estate finance and financial modeling in Excel, and that they wouldn't need to be taught these things if they were hired for the job. If you get tripped up on waterfall calculations at the end of a long test, companies are often going to be pretty forgiving in these types of scenarios, but if you whiff on calculating a property's going in DSCR, or you incorrectly calculate the average cash on cash, or you make other very avoidable errors on the basics of commercial real estate finance, this is going to be a much bigger problem when your model is being reviewed. I've even seen some advanced topics being included as extra credit within a modeling exam, where an employer will explicitly state that something like an equity waterfall isn't even required to be incorporated into a model to finish the test, with the intent to make sure that applicants are focused on the most important pieces of a model, and the more advanced modeling concepts that can and likely will be trained on the job are seen as more of an afterthought within an Excel exam. Concepts that often fall into this category include things like modeling commercial releasing scenarios, incorporating renewal probability, building an equity waterfall model with multiple different hurdle rates, or modeling something like a dynamic refinance or a second layer of financing on a deal. And while these things could potentially come up within an exam, if you're like a lot of people who find out they have a test coming up and only have something like 3 to 7 days to prepare, you want to use the vast majority of your limited time available to make sure you've mastered the fundamentals before getting into the weeds of more advanced modeling topics. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the best way to prepare for a modeling exam is to practice using sample scenarios. And if you want access to multiple Excel modeling tests, along with detailed solution videos that walk you step by step through how to solve each question in a variety of different cases, as always, make sure to check out our all-in-one membership training platform, Breaking the CRE Academy. A membership to the Academy will give you instant access to over 120 hours of video training on real estate financial modeling and analysis. You'll get access to hundreds of practice Excel interview exam questions, sample acquisition case studies, and you'll also get access to the Breaking the CRE Analyst Certification Exam, which covers topics like real estate pro forma and development modeling, commercial real estate lease modeling, equity waterfall modeling, and many other real estate financial analysis concepts that will help you prove to employers that you have what it takes to tackle the responsibilities of an analyst or associate at a top real estate firm. And if you like this video and want to see more content on the channel on modeling case studies, make sure to hit the like button, let me know, and let me know in the comments any other topics that you've seen in Excel-based modeling exams when going through the interview process. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you found this helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to see more videos like this every single week, and I'll see you in the next video.